As the gigantic gates of the frozen arena opened, the fight began instantly. The polar bear was already moving forward, but the gorilla attacked first. Without hesitation, the gorilla charged only a few quick steps across the ice, closing the short distance that already separated him from the polar bear. The crowd behind the reinforced glass walls immediately stood up, shocked by the sudden aggression of the attack. The two collided in the center of the arena. The impact made the ground vibrate. The gorilla instantly started applying pressure, throwing fast and heavy strikes toward the side of the bear's head and shoulders, while using the full weight of his body to force him backward. The sound of the impacts echoed through the frozen enclosure. The polar bear let out a deep roar, a low, powerful roar that made some people step back behind the glass. But the gorilla kept advancing, faster, more aggressive. He pushed the bear non-stop, trying to dominate space from the very first second of the fight. The ice groaned beneath both animals as the bear slid backward, struggling to regain balance. The gorilla leaned his entire body forward, using his monstrous arms and the explosive force of his legs to drive forward with a brutal series of shoves against the polar bear. The bear slid several feet across the ice, but reacted immediately. Rising with his massive body, he swung a heavy paw toward the gorilla's shoulder. The primate stepped back half a pace, partially dodging the attack, then surged forward again with incredible speed. The bear's claws scraped violently against the ice as he tried to recover his footing, while the gorilla continued forcing space, striking rapidly at the shoulders and neck of his rival. The people behind the glass started shouting even louder at the violence of the exchange. The polar bear roared again. The sound echoed across the entire frozen arena, but the gorilla refused to retreat. Cold wind moved slowly through the enclosure as the two remained locked in that brutal contest of strength. The bear started advancing again. Heavy, dominant. Now he used the full weight of his colossal body to pressure the gorilla against the cracked ice. The gorilla tried to grab the bear's neck with both gigantic arms. Every muscle in their bodies tightened completely. Force against force. Instinct against instinct. The people behind the glass watched in complete disbelief. The gorilla relied on short bursts of speed, explosive muscle power, and intelligence to move his rival sideways. The polar bear answered with monstrous resistance and overwhelming body weight to control territory. Neither wanted to back down. The ice beneath them cracked even more. The sound was terrifying. Their heavy breathing turned into vapor in the freezing air, while the two giants shoved each other in the center of the arena. Then the bear roared once more, louder, more aggressive. The sound exploded through the enclosure. The gorilla answered by driving forward with all his strength again. The two continued violently pushing against each other, across the cracked ice, each trying to dominate space and force the other backward. The sounds of paws scraping and bodies colliding echoed throughout the frozen arena, as the struggle became more intense every second. The spectators behind the glass watched in shock. The bear tried using the sheer weight of his body to overpower the gorilla, but the primate twisted quickly to the side and escaped the pressure. Now the two circled each other, breathing heavily, staring directly into one another's eyes. The cold wind crossed the arena slowly, while weak rays of daylight reflected over the fractured ice, and in that moment, it became impossible not to notice the difference between them. The gorilla looked like a living explosion. Fast movements, intense aggression, intelligence. He attacked trying to dominate quickly, trying to establish superiority. The polar bear, on the other hand, looked like pure resistance, calm even during violence, heavy, steady, as if nothing in the world could truly stop him. Then the gorilla charged again. Another rapid sequence of violent shoves erupted in the center of the arena. The primate forced the bear backward, using all the power in his arms, while the bear dug his massive paws into the ice, trying to stop the movement. The muscles in both bodies looked unreal. Veins bulged beneath their fur. The bear twisted his body, trying to push the gorilla sideways. The gorilla answered by grabbing the bear's shoulders and applying even more pressure. The frozen ground continued cracking beneath the impossible weight of that struggle. The people watching could not look away, because it no longer looked like just a fight. It looked like a primitive battle for territory, for dominance, for presence. Neither one accepted being beneath the other. Then the polar bear managed to advance a few steps using the sheer force of his body. Now he was the one applying pressure. His enormous paws dragged across the ice, while the gorilla slowly began sliding backward. The crowd reacted immediately. The gorilla tried to recover space with new aggressive shoves, but the bear kept advancing. Slow, heavy, relentless. Then the two collided once more near the center of the frozen arena. The bear pushed forward with the full weight of his body, trying to overpower the gorilla, but the primate planted his feet firmly into the ice and shoved back violently. The muscles in both bodies trembled as the contest of strength continued, without either one willing to retreat. The bear's roars echoed through the arena, while the gorilla answered by charging forward once again with aggression. The two stood face to face once more, breathing heavily. Vapor poured from their mouths like smoke. The entire arena felt small compared to the overwhelming power of those animals. And while watching them, it became impossible not to think about the nature of both creatures. The gorilla represented social strength, leadership, protection, dominance within his own group. His aggression came from the instinct to protect territory and command respect. The polar bear carried another kind of power, the power of solitary survival, of extreme cold, of absolute endurance. He did not need to prove leadership to a group. He simply dominated alone. And maybe that was why the fight felt so incredible, because they were two kings built in completely different ways. The gorilla attacked with intelligence and explosive aggression. The bear resisted like an unstoppable avalanche. Then the gorilla tried once more. He rushed directly toward the bear and unleashed another violent sequence of shoves in the center of the arena. The bear answered with another deep roar while driving forward in response. The two animals locked together again in an absurd clash of strength. Their muscles trembled. The ice cracked. Even the reinforced glass vibrated slightly from the brutality of the confrontation. The crowd had fallen completely silent now, hypnotized. Because inside that frozen enclosure, there were not simply two animals fighting. There were two gigantic instincts trying to dominate the same territory. Two different forms of power, two forces of nature refusing to retreat, and neither one looked willing to accept defeat. The cold wind continued moving slowly across the arena, while the two remained face to face in the center of the shattered ice. Neither one showed fear. Neither one lowered their head. The polar bear breathed heavily, vapor escaping from his muzzle, while he kept his paws firmly planted on the frozen ground. The gorilla did the same. His enormous arms hung tense at his sides, ready to charge again at any moment. Behind the reinforced glass, nobody spoke. People only watched, hypnotized by the overwhelming presence of those two animals. Because inside that arena, there was more than physical strength. There was pride. The gorilla then took a few slow steps forward. The bear answered by doing the same. The distance between them closed once again, while the ice cracked beneath their colossal weight. And in that final moment, one thing became clear. It did not matter who controlled that arena. Both had already proven themselves to be forces of nature impossible to ignore.